G'day guys, welcome to the round 6 preview on My Blue Heaven. Hope you're well. Isn't the season going really quickly? Can't believe it's already round 6. It just sort of goes by in a flash, but looking forward to this one. So what I might do for this preview is I'm going to get rid of the Carlton hat, okay? And I want to try and look at this game from a neutral point of view and take the Carlton goggles off, which I try and do in most previews, and have a look at the opposition as well. And maybe try and build a case for both teams. And this clearly for me is the game of the round. Saturday night, Optus Stadium, Perth, where we have a really good record. I think we've played there now 3 times, twice against the Dockers for 2 thrilling wins, great wins. And then I think even we pushed the Eagles there in our first ever outing on that ground. I remember that game where we pushed a really strong West Coast Eagles outfit, and they got us. I think they sort of pushed away in the third quarter. So we do play well there. But really, does that mean a lot? Okay, I suppose it gives Carlton, confidence that they can travel to Perth, where we do have a pretty good supporter base. We always have in Perth. So there is a fair deal of support there for the Carlton Football Club. But it will be obviously a real parochial Fremantle Dockers crowd on Saturday night. Fremantle sitting second on the AFL ladder. Carlton 6, both teams 4-1, which is a really, really good start. But the big one for me here is we're separated, or both teams are separated by a pretty large percentage. Fremantle sitting at 141, us on 102, which is the worst percentage in the top 8 at this stage. And that's a big gap, okay? So in 2002, thus far, both teams have hit the scoreboard, so we can score quickly. Both teams do score quickly. The Dockers averaging 87 points, and we're just slightly below that, averaging 86.6. But it's defensively. And I spoke about this in the review after the Port game. It's defensively where the Dockers have tightened up under Justin Longmuir by conceding only 61 points per game thus far. While we continue to struggle in this area, particularly in second halves, and we're conceding and coughing up 84 points per game, which is big. And just to, I suppose, highlight how well the Dockers are going defensively, if you stack that up against the reigning premiers Melbourne, who are only conceding 59.8 points a game, okay, they are just about on par with Melbourne at this stage. And we know Melbourne based their premiership last year on a really, really strong defence. So as far as Fremantle goes, it's working for them. Defensively, it is working for them. And these are the types of numbers, okay, that will be highlighted. That will be highlighted to the playing group, particularly from obviously a back 6 and 7 point of view, but more importantly, a team defence point of view. And what we do know about the Dockers is they are really strong forward of centre in regards to their pressure. They don't make it easier for the opposition to transition from their back half. Interesting at selection, really interesting. Now, I don't know whether this hurts Fremantle or not, but they lose 2 of their rising stars, from my point of view, from that back 6 or 7, which has started to become pretty settled over the last, probably the last 24 months. They lose Heath Chapman and Hayden Young, okay, both future stars of the game, and both have played, showed plenty in 2022 thus far. Young, he's averaging 22 disposals a game, and that left foot of his is something to be seen. His ability to change the angles and kick the ball with penetration is a real weapon for them. So they lose that. And Chapman, his mobility at 193 centimetres is fantastic. His closing speed, and him too, he knows how to find the ball. He's a good mark. He averages 18 disposals a game. And they're both out through the health and safety protocols. So that may hurt them, particularly in their back 6 where they really have been strong. And they bring in Griffin Logue, who I thought was one of their worst players in their one and only loss for the season against St Kilda. He was goddamn awful. He was loose as a goose. and he doesn't have the mobility or leg speed of either a Hayden Young or Heath Chapman. So maybe we can exploit someone like a Griffin Logue. They look a little bit slower in their back half as a result of losing those two players. For us, the big one obviously is getting back Patrick Cripps. And is he ready to go? We'll only find out. But it's a big in. It's a big in for the Carlton Footy Club. A huge in. They lose Matthew Kennedy, whose form has tapered somewhat after an outstanding opening 3 games of the season. He was a little bit better last week against Port compared to the game against the Gold Coast Suns. So we lose a little bit of depth in that midfield. But Cripps comes in, he's a bull at the contest. Kennedy goes out, he's the same. What we may lose is that marking ability around the ground, which Matthew Kennedy does provide. He goes out with soreness. They're just like, when I look at this, so if I'm a neutral and I'm looking at this, it's just like matchups galore. And both of these teams are building. They're in that sort of building phase. And you could probably mount an argument that Fremantle are slightly in front in that regard because they've had their coach now. He's in his 3rd year. I'll get to that in a minute. But this time last year, okay, the Dockers, I think, were what were they? They were 9th on the ladder and we were sitting in 12th on the ladder. Now we find ourselves at the exact time, a season later, okay, both entrenched inside the top 8. And you look at the matchups, okay, and the big one for me, it starts in the middle. It always does. It starts with a contest, throw the ball up. The two big guys go against each other. And Mark Pitnet certainly, in the first half last week, really showed how important he is for the Carlton Football Club, particularly with his hit-outs to advantage, but also his follow-up work at ground level. But he comes up against who I consider one of the best ruckmen in the competition, and that is Sean Darcy. Now, I think Pitnet will probably have the advantage at the centre bounce, but it's around the ground, okay? It's around the ground where Sean Darcy really will potentially cause a lot of headaches for us in this game. His ability to take marks for a start, but it's also his ability to push forward. He's a really highly skilled big man. He actually looks like a fucking suburban country footballer, but geez, he can play. He's a great contested mark, and he's a good kick. I think he kicked 3 last week, and he's caused us headaches in the past. He had a ripper game against us last year at the MCG, and he just about turned the game for the Dockers in that game. He poses a big problem for us in this game, particularly around the ground, okay? Our strength has been our centre work, but then it falls away at the stoppages around the ground. And that's where I think, the Dockers may have that advantage. And then you look at the backups. Silvani against potentially Lob. And that may cause some headaches as well. And what we don't want to see is Silvani up against Sean Darcy at any stage. And what we do know, though, is Silvani can provide the defensive pressure at ground level. So he can give us a lift in that regards. And then the midfield. I mean, this is mouth-watering, really. And I can't, for the life of me, I actually can't split them at this stage in regards to which one is better. And Cripps back in, Hewitt, Welsh, Cherry. I mean, that is quality. And they've all been in really, really good form. Up against Sarong, rising star of the competition. He's a gun, absolute gun. The re-emergence, I suppose, of Will Brodie and what he's been able to achieve at the Fremantle Dockers this year is that inside type player. He's been excellent. And not forgetting David Mundy. I mean, he just continues to defy logic in regards to his age. And he's playing that second fiddle role now in the midfield. But what we don't want to see, he only had 20 touches last week against Essendon. But if he's getting the ball forward of centre, okay, look out, because he is one of the best kicks in the competition. He always makes really good decisions. And he's the one when you look at all that, could get under the guard because he is experienced and he does have a really, really good record against us, David Mundy, the veteran. And then the man of the moment, Brayshaw. And hasn't he come on? And he's just got leadership written all over him, this kid. And I don't know. I would actually like us to go head to head, to be perfectly honest. And let's see who's better. But now we Cripps in, Is there a possibility to send Hewitt, who we know that can do a job, to Brayshaw? That's going to be interesting to see. And then add the wings to that midfield mix as well. And that has been a concern for the Carlton Footy Club for a long period of time now, and it's still not settled. And what Fremantle are doing on their wings is pretty good and pretty impressive. Driscoll, young player, got plenty of speed, loves to run and carry, is pretty tough. And Blake Acres as well has really found a home on his wing. So that's a pretty strong centre line for the Fremantle Dockers. And ours, okay, is sort of workmanlike. Not great skills, but workmanlike. Cottrell was okay last week. Can he continue to grow on that? And we know what Jack Nunes brings to the table. Not only that kick after the siren, we can't forget that, but he does bring honesty, I suppose. But does he have, I suppose, the leg speed, and does he have the skill? We know he will give effort, and I think they can also roll. I mean, we will roll probably Setterfield there at times, but they can also push up the likes of Walker, or also James Aish, who spent a little bit of time on the wings as well. So that's going to be particularly important, particularly on Optus Stadium, which is big and wide. In their forward half, I'm sort of glad he kicked 7 last week against the Bombers. I'm sort of glad, Tabernar, because that could have easily been 7 against us, and I suppose a breakout game for the year. But that gives him confidence, and he can play. Matt Tabernar, he's no spring chicken. He's been around the traps for a long time now. He's skilled in the air and at ground level, and he works his ass off, and he is relatively quick. So, I mean, the obvious one there is Jacob Wiedering, who's been in okay form. To me, he's just looked a little bit sluggish, to be perfectly honest. But I think we bank on Wiedering doing a particularly good job on Tabernar. And the other one is Lobb when he's forward, or even Darcy when he goes forward. And that's going to be left up to possibly team defence, with a combination of both Lewis Young and also Parks at times. That's a worry. That is a little bit of a worry, because we know both of those players can mark the ball above their head. So it is a concern. And then we look at the one of the real strengths I see of Fremantle, okay, this year, and they've been building this over a couple of years now, is their small forwards. And they have a really nice mix of both defensive pressure and class. And they get back Schultz after missing last week. Chuck him Swiskowski, both hard nuts. Swiskowski's class. He's class as well. He does hit the scoreboard, and they tackle like men possessed. Collier can roll through there, and the one I'm worried about is Walters. Just because he's been playing okay. He's been playing okay, but he hasn't hit the scoreboard. And you just feel like this could be the one for him. And with the attention maybe going to those other players like Schultz and Swiskowski, and also we've got to consider who I think one of the best X factor players in the competition in Frederick, who's got some serious tricks, and I've just got no idea who's going to play on him. Will it be Parks? I don't know, but he can motor. Just feel that Walters could get under the guard here in this game. If you move over up the other end of the ground, I mean, Harry and Charlie have just been in super form. They've just been in super form, and this will cause headaches. This will cause headaches for the Dockers, but they have been good defensively. We probably know Pearce will get the job on Harry, and he's hit back pretty hard after a long layoff with injury. I like Harry's work rate and what he's building in his game. I'm really starting to see him grow as a player and find more tricks. He really needs to try and work Pearce over. And who goes to Charlie? Is it Cox or is it Ryan? I suggest it will probably be Cox, a little bit more conservative, and they'll allow Luke Ryan just to do what he does really well, and that's intercept. And he loves to intercept and he loves to attack, which is Luke Ryan. So he will probably get the job on Silvani. But for us, I think when you look at up the other end and someone like Frederick, okay, as being as a wild card or even Walters, okay, Silvani and Martin become really important for us, okay? Their ability to hit the scoreboard, which Martin did last week, and get really dangerous. And we speak about our small forwards who are still developing. And I think Fremantle have got their nose in front in that respects. Although I kind of like what Owies are doing and Durden are doing in partnership. And they will keep the likes of Jordan Clark and James Aish honest. And they have the possibility in this game to exploit this, because I don't necessarily see that as a massive strength, okay, for Fremantle. They're small defenders who like to attack and set up. The things that concern me from a Dockers point of view is their speed. Their speed by foot. I mean, they've just got it everywhere, all over the park. Walker, Clark, Driscoll, Frederick, Swiskowski, Collier. They can motor, but it's not just the speed by foot. It's one thing to have speed by foot, but it's also speed of ball movement as well. And their ability, what Fremantle have been able to do this year is to have a system which releases these outside players. They actually release them and find them, and they become damaging. And we don't necessarily have that. Okay, we don't necessarily have that leg speed. And that for me is a huge concern. They are smacking the opposition on turnover in their front half and scoring at will from this. And we do have a tendency when we're under pressure to butcher the ball coming out of our defence. So this is huge. They are organised and they're disciplined, really organised and disciplined. And under Justin Longmuir, he can coach. He mightn't have the pizzazz and he mightn't have the personality of some of the other coaches, but he knows what he is doing, and he's building a really, really strong list and a really strong culture at this football club, and they do things for each other. And what they do well, and what Justin Longmuir has been able to do, and it's sort of Sydney-like, is he's getting the best out of, I suppose, discards. Blake Acres has found a home and playing a role. James Aish the same. He was in sort of no man's land. Brisbane, Collingwood, now found a role down back, being good. Now we see Will Brodie. Unbelievable what he's been able to do this season in the midfield. And Jordan Clark as well. He wasn't discarded from Geelong, but he was a little bit lost. He's come in, he's been really good. So it's sort of Sydney-like, finding a role, having belief, okay? And I think that's been really impressive from their point of view. And we know, okay, from what we've seen this year, that the Dockers finish games really well. They run out games really well. What we, or I suppose Carlton, can hang their hat on, or our hat on in that regard. So regardless of our fade-outs, okay, regardless of the fade-outs, which are a concern, okay, and will need to be addressed. And we'll be looking at that. We'll be looking at that really closely. We have been able to find something late in games to hang on. So there is some grit, there is some fight there, okay? And can we also go back to round one against Richmond, where we did come from behind, where we did explode in that last quarter, okay, and showed that we could also finish off games well. And if it is close, or if we are slightly behind, we can use that as a reference point. I also look at the fact that the Dockers had an easy kill last week. I mean, it's not easy to go to Docklands against Essendon, who we know love that ground. No matter how bad a form they're in, they seem to always play well at Docklands. But they went there and got the job done, but Essendon were appalling. They're absolutely appalling. Whereas we, the week before, got our pants pulled down by the Suns, and then we had to scrap. We had to scrap and fight our way to the death against Port Adelaide last week. Is that mentally, can we get anything mentally out of that game as well? And then we go back to Fremantle's only loss for the year, and that was against St Kilda in round 2. And they're a pretty good centre clearance team, the Dockers. But in that game against the Saints, They were smashed out of the middle, 14-4. 14-4. Okay, and they got beaten by 10 points. And Jack Higgins kicked 4 goals and Max King kicked 4. They had big, big afternoons, okay, and were a real headache, okay, because of that pressure of the ball coming inside forward 50. So they got plenty of looks that day, St Kilda. And we know that centre is our one wood at this stage. We know that. So that becomes a really important factor for us. In saying that though, I can't help but feel that we, or Carlton, will need to find more layers to win this game. More than just that. Okay, more than just that. And right at this stage, because I suppose of the stability and the fact that Longmuir has really started to build this team over now a 2.5 year period, compared to Voss coming in and still working things out, I just think the Dockers at home, okay, will just have a little bit more to their game than the Carlton Football Club. So I'm picking Fremantle by 4 points. What do you think?